It is a weird thing to be able to change the world. And that's what having a child does. The first dyad is mother and child. When we are in the dyad of things, it is almost impossible to access creativity, right? The rewind just clicks in and sort of takes us over. So the idea of moving into a more systemic view, a wider landscape, is first and foremost to allow that dyadic you and me, good me, bad me, problem, solution, right? All of those either ors to kind of have space to become something more, both in the question and in the resolution. Okay, so the first constellation is mother and child, and it begins at conception. And everything else really pales in comparison in a way, right? Our anger, our analysis, our interpretation, our, all the intelligences that we call upon pale in comparison to what we learn somatically for 9 months. That's a long course, right? That's a long course, 9 months. And it is a primal, fundamental course in which what we take in is literal sustenance. It is how we fill up. It is the environment of all of our first knowledge. And we take it in order to survive. We take it in order to survive. And so when the mother, our mother, is frightened, or when she is angry, or when she is ambivalent, or God forbid, when she's joyful, right? We take that in a way that we don't yet have words to explain it to ourselves or to the world. So that level of learning never happens again. That level of learning, we are never so literally impressionable as in that first constellation. And this first constellation, mother and child, is nested in a history of first constellations. So every difficulty that a mother brings forward is nested in a history of difficulties. It is a weird thing to be able to change the world. And that's what having a child does. So when we are born to a mother who is ambivalent or fearful or angry, there is the logic that it is birth that is going to amplify those feelings that have been there always, since her childhood, since she was in somebody's womb. Because in a way, the greatest confrontation is somebody emerging from you and then depending on you. That is going to amplify all of the insecurities and fears and anger and terror of the woman who carries us, as it did for the woman who carried her and the woman who carried her and the woman who carried her. and it comes down generationally so that it is part of the amniotic fluid, comes down dynamically so that it is part of the environment of the home. It comes down through the lineage as part of what we're swaddled in. And it makes the deepest impression. So this first constellation, mother and child, is the constellation to work with. It's the constellation to work with and informs all other constellations. And one of the first things that we do is in our mind's eye, we let ourselves see our mothers cared for. And the reason we have to do that is because if I could just leave you, Mom, Evelyn, if I could just leave you without looking back, I could just leave you, I suppose. But none of us can do that. No matter how horrible our mothers were, none of us can do that. Why? Because of this simple, negligible thing. She gave us life. So the bond is there, whether or not the love is. So bonds are not necessarily sentimental, right? Right, so we have trauma bonds and there must be other kinds of bonds, right? And we have this little thing called a birth bond. Right, this little thing called a birth bond. And it's not something we can get over. Nor should we. Nor should we. We shouldn't want to get over that. We should want perhaps to find the ground outside of that, outside of this dyadic piece.